This is the I Shoulda Did More Reading podcast. I shoulda did more reading.com. I shoulda did more reading on Insta, not Instagram. We found out that it's not cool, Kerry, with kids to call it Instagram.
What is it, the gram?
Gram or Insta?
Insta.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
They will stone you to death if you call it Instagram.
Well, I knew Facebook was passé when I joined it 10 years ago. You know, when I got on it, no, it can't be cool anymore, right? And now apparently it's...
Oh, now it's boomers. Baby boomers.
Yeah, exactly.
I got to get rid of my MySpace account.
That might be coming back.
Is you banned on it?
This is the I Shoulda Did More Reading podcast. I shoulda did more reading.com. You can find us on Insta, Twitter, and Facebook as something. It's I Shoulda Did More Reading. You'll find it there somewhere. Please subscribe. Mercifully beg you to subscribe. We won't hound you with anything but just mediocre podcasts every week, I promise. So we are thrilled to bring in Kerry Byrne. If you don't know Kerry Byrne, you probably do know something that he does because his hand is in several different empires. You can find him at fancredsports.com or coldhardfootballfacts.com. And he has been a food and drinks writer forever, for the Herald, probably 15 years or so?
19 years at the Herald.
19 years. And we'll call him the ambassador to Quincy, Massachusetts. We'll get into all this stuff as well. Kerry, welcome.
Thank you. So what happened? Your scheduled guest couldn't show up, so you had to scramble to get somebody last second.
Yep, and then they couldn't show up.
So I'm the third string guest. All right.
We had the FedEx guy here for a bit eventually.
Well, that's good for the ego, man. You know, thankfully I have nice hair and I feel good about myself, you know.
So it's funny, you know, Kerry, I think I met you at a big, really fancy party at somebody's mansion that I had no business being at.
Yeah. Can we mention who it was?
Yeah.
Yeah, at the Ernie Bach Bash,
yes.
Right? Yeah.
Ernie, we are accepting advertisements.
I heard those parties were one of the best parties in the area to go to, or annual parties. Do they still have them, or?
You know what? It's come and gone. You know, one of the last big ones he had was a fundraiser for Trump, which here in Boston was such a, you know, where, you know, 75% of the people vote Democrat and 90% say they do, right, just to avoid the stigma.
Yeah.
But he had a big fundraiser. I was out of the town that day, but apparently that was kind of a big thing for him to put his neck on the line. Of course, when you're that wealthy, you can kind of do what you want. But they were great bashes. He has this like mansion. You wouldn't expect, like right off Route 1 in like Norwood or something, right? It's like here's Route 1, and all of a sudden here's this palatial.
Yeah, it's automobile dealership. There's a Wendy's, there's a Denny's, and then there's like take a right, and there's his mansion, and it's beautiful. It's got a pool. It's over the top. Ernie's a guy who likes being rich just fine. I think.
Yeah. Hey, good for him. Would you? Were you there at the block party when the Go-Go's played?
I think that was it.
Was that the same one?
Yeah,
okay, I went to
great.
I don't know, 3 or 4 of them. I'm not sure if he still does them, but my buddy, his claim to fame is, what was the name? Belinda Carlisle told him to shut up. He was screaming.
Is this Frankie?
Frankie's.
Yeah.
Whose legend precedes him. But he went to one of these parties, and he was so infatuated back, you know, we're children of the 80s. We grew up with the Go-Go's. And he was so excited. He was screaming his love for Belinda.
Of course.
And he actually like reposts a video on Facebook every year. You know, embarrassment is nothing to a guy like that. You know, he just feels
he's the kind of guy who fits right in, Frankie C, at one of these places with an open bar where Kerry and myself, I think, were doing just fine. My wife was there at the time.
That's right, not your wife. Yeah.
So if my wife had said, Tom, I'm just going to leave you here with the guys, then it would have been a very different and wonderful evening. Unfortunately, I was not permitted to do that. But, Kerry, so I want to start. You do so much, man. You've got your hand in so many things. Why do you make it tough on yourself? You're like an entrepreneur in 18 different ways.
Well, you know what? It's the way my mind works. Like, I have like 5 things I'm interested in. I want to do all 5. I've literally never had a job. I've had jobs, but I've never had a job.
Yeah.
You know, I worked in the corporate world for when I came out of school.
Okay, so let's start there. So you went to Quincy High School?
Quincy High and then Boston College. So I went to a legit...
So you're a good student, obviously. You got into BC.
Yeah. No, I was perfectly fine. I wouldn't say I was a good student, but I was smart enough to skate, you know. So, like talking about what's the name of the podcast now?
I should have did more reading.
I read plenty, but I never read a single assigned book in 4 years of AP English and 4 years of Boston College.
Those are boring.
Never, no, because I'm like, anyone can read the book and then pass the test. That's like cheating to me. It takes a real genius to pass the test and not having read the book. So that was kind of my theory on life, right? I mean, I want to, So, and I read all the time. I probably read more books than anybody I know, and I love reading, or I don't read as much anymore, but that's how I learned to write, was reading. But anyway, I just never read the assigned book. So when I got out of school, like I was going to go to law school, and I'm like, you know what? That just sounds so boring. And I just started, all the craft breweries were opening at the time. This is the early 90s. And I started saying, hey, you know what? There's a scene here. I started writing like for trade publications about like these breweries opening, and that one thing led to another. And before long,
how do you get to write for trade publications?
You go there, well, you go and say, hey, can I write a story? And they're looking for writers.
And they need content. And
I made $25 for my first story back in 1993. I recorded it on a floppy disk.
Yes.
Before email.
Yeah.
And when you had to call the people and get the information, you couldn't just look it up on the internet. And brought it to the editor and delivered it to his house so we could, edit it. But that one thing led to another. And before long, within a few years, I was writing for like Esquire magazine. They were trying to get into the beer scene. I was like the first guy doing it. The Herald hired me in '98 to do a freelance beer column. I think it was the first big city paper in America with a beer column. I mean, I remember calling the editor of the Globe. And she literally laughed at me. Beer?
Oh, yes.
Nobody drinks beer with food.
Oh, come on.
Like literally, she laughed at me. People drink wine with food, but that was the culture. But it was a cultural thing. It wasn't reality. It was just a cultural construct. But I was always interested in different things, and I also wrote sports and parlayed that into this cold hard football facts that a lot of people around Boston knew, which I parlayed into a gig with Sports Illustrated, and now we have this fan cred business. Our mobile app is fan cred. Download that. It's kind of like a Facebook for sports fans. It's like all the fun of social media without all the political BS and it's just sports. So you can connect with Bruins fans and Patriots fans. So I've just always been interested in a bunch of different stuff, and when I worked in the corporate world for about 7 years, but I was always
So what did you do in the corporate world?
I did like financial marketing for a company here in Boston.
Okay, so one of the big
ran there
companies.
like internal
One of the tall
communications.
buildings.
Yeah, one of the tall buildings.
So how does that not suck all your time?
Well, it's only 40 hours a week. You show up at 9, you leave at 5.
But is it really lucrative?
The money was, for that time in my life, the money was pretty good. Helped me get my financial footing. And this was an old bond firm, and they were giving out like 50% bonuses and stuff like that. That here the bonus is, hey, we're not going to fire you, right? You know what I mean?
What
in the
is a
newspaper,
free coffee,
right? Hey, bonus, you're not getting fired, right?
Bonus is like the jackalope.
And then, the newspaper business, and you and I worked at the Herald together for quite some time. It's just a different world, and so that was good. But I was antsy. I was anxious. But I was freelancing for the Herald, freelancing for magazines.
So what was the core of the passion to write about beer? Just because you simply were interested?
I like to think I'm ahead of trends. Like I saw the trend coming, and all these little breweries are open. I'm like, you know what? There's a lot here. There's a lot to beer. It's kind of a real interesting thing, and people don't know about it. People think of it as a working man's drink, and wine is so flighty and and upscale. And I know I put flighty and upscale together. Those aren't necessarily the same thing, but.
Well, flighty's a good double entendre for beer too.
Flighty,
that's right.
But
So I read your article on Guinness in your I don't know which publication was in.
I'm not sure.
It was all about beer actually.
Oh, back in the day.
Yeah. Did you go to Dublin?
Yeah. So at one time when I must have been writing for the Herald at the time, a publisher called me and wanted to do a book about Guinness. And Guinness is an amazing company. I mean, it's this dark beer that's served all over a golden beer world, like in every country in the world. Like the second biggest Guinness country in the world is Nigeria. Nobody even knows that. Bigger than Ireland. Wow. Yeah. And they asked me to write a book, but they wanted to write a business book about the business, and that didn't interest me. I wanted to write about Arthur Guinness because nobody knows anything about him. So I went through the archives. I found out where he was born. I found his first brewery. I found his grave. I found out that the Guinness official birth date for him is wrong.
Oh yeah,
like they have this.
Really?
They made up a birth date for him, but the math doesn't work when you find out all the little details. So the book never came to fruition, but it led to a few magazine articles. But yeah, I went all over Ireland working on that. And Ireland, Guinness is pretty interesting. First of all, the Guinness Brewery is the biggest tourist attraction in Ireland.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Wow. Kind of like the Sam Adams Brewery is basically one of the biggest attractions here in Boston.
Yeah.
But they have like a full-time team of archivists that chronicle the company's history, and a lot of their businesses, Americans coming over they learn that, granduncle, Jimmy worked at Guinness, so they want to find out. So it's pretty cool. It's a company that really embraces its history, and with St. Patrick's Day coming up, Guinness is obviously front and center of a lot of things.
I'll be having myself a couple of those for sure.
Oh yeah.
Hey, I had another question about. So here's my understanding of craft beer and how and the evolution of that. In my experience, I have always loved would you consider Sierra Nevada a craft beer?
Yeah, you know what? Sierra Nevada is a beer that turned me on to beer.
Yeah, same with me.
Yeah, the old pale ale, which
Exactly.
nowadays is so mild.
Yeah.
Like people, it's not an India pale ale, but at the time, I remember drinking it at Sunset Grill.
Okay,
like in
so
1989, 90. I'm like, oh my God, wow, what is that flavor?
It's so good.
It's hops.
Yeah.
It turned out it was hops, but now it's so mild. They're not even on the radar screen of common beer drinkers.
Indeed.
You know?
But they would be considered a craft
It's definitely
brewery.
a craft beer.
So,
yeah.
So I thought that the craft brewery started. My first one was Sierra Nevada on a rooftop in Beacon Hill in '94. But anyway, but I was in California, and I thought that there was a trend for brewery restaurants happening at the time, and then over the course of 5-10 years, they all went away. A few of them are still around.
Yep.
But then again, now we're doing even more craft beers. We're having, there's a couple of breweries in Everett right now, which
there's 3 of them now.
kick ass.
There's a whole fermentation district in Everett right now.
It went away for a little while. Or at least the restaurant model went away,
did,
right?
yep.
And then the brewery, the interactive brewery type
They
thing.
call it a tap room now. Is the term,
all right.
yeah.
Okay.
So what happened is several years ago, it used to be if you had a brewery, you could only distribute your beer, and you could serve free samples at the brewery, in the visitor center, but you couldn't sell full retail $7 pints. If you wanted to have a brewery and also sell full retail beer, you also had to have a full service restaurant.
Right.
So that was the brewery restaurant, a brew pub model. And there was a whole bunch of them around Boston. There's Northeast Brewing Company, Back Bay Brewing Company, Commonwealth Brewing Company by the Garden. But as a business model, it didn't really work because you're taking away revenue generating seats, say 50 seats, to put in a brewery when you could just buy the beer from somebody else, right? So they changed the laws, I don't know, 5-10 years ago. I don't know the exact date. And all of a sudden, this tap room model came about, and you see them all over the place. Night Shift in Everett is one of the premier examples.
Love it.
Where you show up, and there's a brewery right there, and they're selling $7 pints.
Right.
There's no restaurant. They park food trucks outside, so they don't have any costs for, hiring a chef, hiring a kitchen staff, putting in the kitchen equipment. And it's a cash cow because they're selling $7 pints with no distribution cost. No, they're just literally pumping it right from the kegging it right there. So it's led to this this boom, this second wave, third wave boom in the craft beer biz, where there's a much lower cost to entry, and it's not only that, it's much easier to monetize your product right away instead of finding a distributor. Screw it, I'm just going to open a friggin' brewery and serve the beer right there. So it's been really good for these breweries. They've popped up all over the place. It's almost hard to keep track.
Yeah.
But it's now to the point where it's hurting restaurants, and the restaurants are saying, "Hey, what's going on here?"
Right.
And I know there was a movement afoot to kind of push from the restaurant industry to push back against it. So we may see that curtail in the near future too.
But I mean, what a testament to freedom, though. You leave them alone and make sure they don't have to have a kitchen. What they might be taking a loss on anyway.
Yep.
And let them sling beers.
Yep.
And you've got the consumer and you've got the beer and the consumer and nothing in between.
Yep.
It's like perfect. And what I've seen that they've done in Everett is there are families going in there, man.
Yeah. You can bring your pizza. Yeah, pizza delivered. You bring your kids. It's fantastic.
Yeah, now I'm in the PR and consulting biz since I left the Herald, and one of my clients is this guy named Avi Shemtov. He's this great chef, great young chef. He has a Chubby Chickpea food truck. He also has something called the Tapped Beer Truck. It's Greater Boston's first mobile craft beer bar.
Oh, nice.
But he has a very good relationship with all the breweries. So his food truck specializes in this brewery taproom service. He'll be at Night Shift. He'll be at Trillium. But he does now these shakshuka brunches. Shakshuka he's an Israeli kid, this old Israeli breakfast dish, and it's unbelievable. But he does them at Dorchester Brewing Company. He'll be doing them at other breweries coming up. But I was in Dorchester Brewing Company last Sunday for the brunch, and there had to be 6 newborn babies in there. Because young families go in there. It's just a place, that generation, 25 to 35, they're just going to hang out, have a beer or two, play some games. It's like their social center, and they don't have to spend a lot of money. The brewery's totally open to people hanging. It's kind of like a coffee shop with beer where they don't have to rush you out. But it's definitely that generation spends a lot of time in these tap rooms. Yeah.
So that is scary, though, to think that the restaurants, and I don't blame them. I mean, the restaurant business is just brutal.
Restaurants are brutal. I mean, I covered it for years, and I'm still involved in it on the consulting side, and the margins are small, the costs are high, the bullshit you have to deal with internally, trying to get help, and all, of course, there's a crisis of help in the industry.
Yep.
There's too many restaurants in Boston.
All
and
the health inspectors, all that crap.
It's a nightmare business, and then everyone's hitting them up. I get calls every week. Hey, we're doing a fundraiser. Can you get a gift from so and so, so and so? And I'm like, after a while, I'm like, no, because I can go to each restaurant maybe once a year. I don't want to go every time I'm asked. I have to have, because they do a lot to help the community, but everyone thinks they have all this money.
Yeah.
But they may have a $10,000 night, but you know what that costs were that night or over the course of the week, and
small margins,
when it's lunchtime, there's only 4 people in there. They're still paying the electrical bill. They're still paying the dishwasher. They're still paying this. So it's a tough business.
It is a tough business. I just talked to the guy who runs the bar at near North Station, near what's it called? Near the Greatest Bar. There's a new bar there. Maybe you haven't been there, Kerry. I'm trying to look for the guy's card because he was such a good guy. His name was here he is. It's called Rogue. And they're on what is that street? They're on Portland Street.
Oh, yeah.
Friend Street, sorry, right next to the Greatest Bar. A guy named Anthony was a great guy, Somerville kid. And they talked about the art of having a restaurant/bar in that neighborhood, because obviously all the cash just flows in like a tsunami before the games.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So from 6 p.m. to 6:53, bang. And it's a huge rush. You have to have all your security and all the staff ready, but then after that, when the game starts, it's freaking empty.
Yeah,
it's incredible. And then they have to have the post-game rush and the staffing for that and all that stuff that you have to have. It's just incredible. It seems like. Do you think?
Go on.
No. Do you think that the traditional restaurant model is the thing of the past?
I talk about this with a lot of people. I mentioned Shem Tov earlier. I mean, he specializes in mobile food service, right? He's never going to have a brick and mortar. He doesn't want to, why spend the money when he can have a mobile business, do catering, set up outside a brewery. And the next generation is more open to that. I think if you're older, I don't know how old you guys are. I'm 48.
Yeah,
same.
Yeah, so people older than us, they want to go sit down. Not only, I want to go sit at the bar. People older than me want to go sit at a table or a booth. It's just, you see it. In restaurant, people see it. My generation, sit at the bar, that's cool. I can go to a food truck every now and then. But the younger generation likes the impermeability of these food trucks, of the tap rooms, of the funkiness of it. They love pop-ups in urban spaces. That's kind of part of their ethic. Now, is it a trend or is it part of a wider, cultural shift? Like, there was a time when people thought craft beer was a trend. No, you can see it coming. It's not a trend. It's a cultural shift. We're not going back anytime soon to people drinking only Budweiser and Pabst and Miller. That's not happening. The world's changed. I don't know if this is a world has changed, but it is changing. And how far it goes, I still don't know. But they've made it, at several levels, made it hard to run a brick and mortar. And also there are alternatives. There are alternatives to do it. Why should someone... and then say most chefs don't have a lot of money, especially when they start out. The only ones who do are the ones who really kind of create a big name for themselves. But otherwise, you're borrowing money from friends and family, from investors.
Right.
You end up only owning 20% of the business. There's people breathing down your neck. Do this, do that. You lose your control. You lose your creative control. And then you're spending half the time, doing the books, hiring people, dealing with theft. It's a tough. People don't realize how tough the business is.
Well, it's just like similar to how Blockbuster sort of faded away. Yeah. I mean, it went from...
I still have a Blockbuster card. And,
I mean, there is definitely a culture shift, and people want different. They don't want to... It's not like how people used to go to the same restaurant every week for years. They want 5 different trucks so they can go try 5 different things during the week. And
plus, they eat out more. People don't cook as much. I mean, that's a fact. I don't have the research in front of me, but people eat out more. We just at kind of all generations, we cook at home less, and there's something exciting about I eat out. Yeah, I eat out almost every meal, and I have at the Herald, covering food for all those years. There was always somewhere new to go and somewhere new to check out. So you kind of get used. And I became a good cook because I had all these recipes. I have thousands of recipes from the best chefs. And I learned to cook by osmosis. I know if I do this, this, and this will happen. But rarely now do I cook, because there's so much cool stuff out there to do, And so if you're a food person, with all that said, if you're a food person, this is one of the best times ever to be a food person. You have access to everything, and it's all right there. Maybe, not in Oshkosh, or Dubuque, but even those cities are more advanced than people realize. And here in Boston, you have access to everything, and our generation didn't. I mean, we still grew up with TV dinners and white bread, and and one kind of toothpaste and one kind of Cheerios.
Well, I've also noticed that
I won't mention toothpaste because you used to eat a lot of toothpaste, right?
Used to. What do you mean?
I've also
What are you
noticed that
supposed to do with it?
I've also noticed that food to purchase at the grocery store is becoming more and more expensive. Where you're like, well, I could have just gone out for that amount.
Yeah.
So it's more likely to go out now. It's the time and the effort that take and the money that it takes to prepare a proper dinner.
Yeah.
It's getting more and more expensive.
And and then there's one reason there's been a big movement away from the the corporatization of food. You had all these in the post-war era. We had to not only feed our own army overseas, we had to feed the rest of the world after the war, and we commoditized our food pretty dramatically. It was real easy to take all this stuff from the middle of the country and turn into bread and ship it all over the world instead of doing it little bakeries here and there. Now the movement has been to bring that back home. You see, I'm actually working on an urban farm project in Quincy to turn this big tract of land into this cool historic urban farm on land that John and Abigail Adams used to own. And
that's cool.
we'd like to grow stuff that they grew, like heirloom produce, and because John and Abigail were farmers first, before they took down the British Empire. But but so this effort to localize your food actually has made it. One reason it's become more organic food costs more.
Yeah.
Everyone wants things organic and this and that, and that costs more. It's food is much cheaper to produce on a large scale, like anything, much cheaper to produce on a large scale basis. Yeah. So that effort has increased the cost of food in certain levels, at a lot of levels.
So I need your prediction on two things that I find sacred: the fate of the dive bar and the fate of my beloved McDonald's restaurant and things like that.
Well, I did a thing the other day on it was a social media post on burgers I had loved, hamburgers. And I'm not a big hamburger guy.
Yeah.
Like I'm not into all the cool burger joints, but one of them was this jalapeno burger at a place called Braintree Brew House. It's kind of cool. It's like a sports bar with like social bar pizza, and they have this great burger. So it was the Townsend burger at this cool cocktail bar in Quincy called the Townsend, and then it was a McDonald's quarter pounder.
All right.
I think a quarter pounder, you're a McDonald's guy,
certainly
is good as any trendy Five Guys, Tasty Brew, whatever out there. I love a quarter pounder. I think it's, and I've had them in France. I've had them all over the world, and they're delicious. They're delicious.
That's quarter pounder's Burger King, yeah?
No, it's McDonald's.
It's McDonald's.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah.
So I was when they had the 99-cent menu and the double cheeseburger was on that menu for in my mind that was the greatest value in the continental United States. 99 cents you get one of these delicious things that has mostly beef in it and some other things. It was just absolutely
Mostly
delicious.
beef.
And the big McDonald's now going to fresh burgers, right?
Is that a good idea?
Well,
they have to keep up.
People like the idea, but there's nothing wrong with freezing food, and then it's only a preservation technique, right? But it's people, it's not fresh.
Yeah.
Well, whatever. But it tastes delicious. And are you going to be able to tell the difference in taste? I don't know. People like the idea of it. Like, they like the idea of organic. But you know what? Like, botulism is organic. You really want, I mean, not everything organic is good. You know what I mean? But people they have these buzzwords, and I support that. The whole plant-based movement, which is not vegan anymore. It's plant-based. I support all that. I think it's all good. But these things have the effect of raising costs. And is it necessarily better? I don't know.
No, that's a lot of cultural, pressure there.
But that's the thing with the food,
even processed food in itself. I mean, that can mean 30 different things.
Yeah.
Processed, tomatoes, canned tomatoes are processed, and they're supposedly healthier than tomatoes that aren't canned. So there's all sorts of stuff. It's all part of the movement.
Yeah.
But for instance, Jay's niece hates McDonald's.
I was just going to
thinks it's disgusting. And I think culturally as well, young people are told that's bad.
She's
absolutely.
She's 21-ish.
Yeah.
So millennial and maybe not even a millennial. Too young for that. But she's in college, and I think that the younger folks do not tend to go to these establishments. So the fate of McDonald's may not be.
Yeah. And I don't know what their sales figures are. I don't eat there all the time. I might eat there 2 or 3 times a year. I'm on the road. I want to it's always delicious. Yeah. It's always hot, and it always comes out. I went to I'll mention a local establishment here in the Seaport, Del Frisco's once.
Oh, yeah.
I was still at the Herald, and I said, you know what? I want a nice juicy burger. And I went there at 2:30 in the afternoon, so it was after the lunch rush and before dinner. And the worst time to get service at a restaurant is when it's slow. When it's busy, they're hustling, they're working. When it's slow, like they're on their cell phone, they're talking to the staff. And I find service when a place is slow is the worst.
Yeah.
Anyway, It took me forever. I had like 2 drinks, an app, and a burger. It cost me $94. The burger took 45. The burger took 45 minutes to come out because it was just sticking around, getting ready for dinner, whatever. And the burger came out cold.
Shift
and
change maybe.
And I'm like, for $3.99, I could have got a piping hot quarter pounder.
Oh no!
Instead of $94 for it. It was bad. And Del Frisco's is a great place. I wrote when they opened. I wrote about it, and it's a good place.
Yeah.
But on this moment, would have much rather have had a quarter pounder than a juicy burger at one of the premier steakhouses in Boston.
Totally
And got on with your day.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, and got on with your day with $60 in your pocket.
But there's something to be said. Even restaurant people, if they're being honest, will admit what McDonald's does. That consistency across the board, and to be able to, there's just the logistics of serving food and that level of quantities in all those locations is genius.
I think that's a crock.
But no other country in the world could really do that, man. That's kind of an outfall of this post-war corporatization of food. That there actually are some benefits to it. I think it's pretty cool that you can go there and get a meal for $5 and be happy and move on with it if that's what you need at that time. That doesn't mean you should eat it all the time.
Well, like you said, I mean, you talk about the prices of that place, and this is something that blows me away. And this is the Seaport District in Boston that we're recording this podcast from right now. But there are these areas are being stamped around the United States, similar areas which don't look like anything else. But as comedian Steve Sweeney calls this area Dubai. No, it is more like Dubai than Boston, certainly.
Yeah.
And the fact that if we go out for lunch here in this area, it's easily $30. I mean, that's without any beer.
Yeah.
But I mean, you wonder. I mean, first of all, where's all the money coming?
That's why when you go to the rest of the country, most people think like Ruby Tuesday and Texas Roadhouse. Those are like the restaurants they go to eat at, because outside New England, outside New York, once you get to the real America, that's what people eat, because they're at every highway interchange, and not everyone has the money and the access. They compared to most countries, we have a lot. No matter where you are, we have incredible access to food. But here in Boston, it's totally unique. I mean, there's only a few.
Yeah.
There's probably a dozen cities like that around the country, but it's changing, man. People, it drives me nuts when New Englanders make fun of. And I grew up here my whole life, but there's this mindset that Boston's the greatest place in the world, and everyone else is a bunch of toothless redneck hillbillies.
Yep.
Some of the best food cities in the world are down in the down deep south. Charleston, South Carolina, is widely considered a better food city than Boston.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No,
How come we can't manage to do a goddamn breakfast in this city?
It is weird. By the way, shameless plug. The best breakfast in Boston is at Mike's City Diner in the South End, and I wrote a cookbook with the owner.
Really?
Yeah, Jay Haj last year, called Beirut. He's an immigrant from Lebanon.
I heard of that place, actually.
Where is it?
It's on Washington Street. He's on the Food Network all the time.
Yeah,
Guy Fieri wrote the foreword to the book, and he's on with Guy all the time. But he's this Lebanese immigrant who came here, had nothing overseas. He was amazed by the world of food here in the United States. And the whole book is based on his kind of culinary journey from war-torn Beirut to this great American success story. He's one of the owners behind Yvonne's and the old Walkover building.
Yep.
And actually, he owns the
you
building.
like that place? We've been in there.
Yeah. So, and he was on Phantom Gourmet as well.
Yeah.
But he doesn't do food it's an unexpected place. This food is not like anything that you typically
It's
go
basically
to.
American diner food, but it's done really well.
But it's done,
Really
yeah.
He has all these fresh turkey. His famous thing is turkeys. Like Food Network named his Pilgrim Sandwich one of the 5 best Thanksgiving meals in America.
Nice.
Stuff like that. And it just developed a kind of a cult following. But speaking of, this is what made me think of it, besides the shameless plug. Also, Beirut to Boston, a cookbook, is available on Amazon.com and your local bookstore. But what he was amazed by when he came from the Middle East is the unbelievable variety of food here. And he discovered, Chinese food and Greek food and Italian food. And it was an Italian guy. Everyone in Roslindale knows him, and that West Roxbury, this guy, Vinnie Marino, who was a famous boxer but also owned restaurants. And he got a job cooking for this Italian-American guy. And he just was amazed by, we have such a cultural patchwork here that we don't appreciate. As Americans, we don't appreciate it. Jay appreciates it because he knew a world without it, where everybody was the same, and the people who weren't the same were all killing each other.
Yeah.
So his book is about just the endless variety of food here. Even no matter where you live, we're spoiled to have such great access to so much different food,
Yeah, it's very interesting. And my own story is my grandparents lived in Vermont, and they bought their house in the 40s and whatever, and all of the dishes that they made that we loved growing up were mostly Italian.
Yeah.
great Italian food, even though they're old Yankees from Vermont. But all of the granite quarries were staffed by Italians. Came over and worked the quarries.
Yeah. Same thing in Quincy, where I live. The south side of Quincy, around the quarries, was all Italian. There's some bocce clubs
and
there
they could cook with everything.
And
so like all the Yankee dishes were like thrown away. Like we're never going back.
So I'm going to make this political real quick. This is one of my pets. You and I agree politically. I don't know what you are. So I go nuts. I go batshit crazy every year when people talk about what a jerk and a racist Christopher Columbus was. Mm-hmm. Christopher Columbus inspired the greatest period of cultural integration in the history of the world, and the reason we know that is because of food. Mm-hmm. There are no tomatoes in Italian food. Tomatoes come from the New World. The Romans didn't eat bolognese sauce. They didn't have tomatoes. They only came there after the discovery of the New World. The Irish didn't eat potatoes. Potatoes come from the New World.
Jesus.
The New Englanders never made apple pie because apples come from China. They don't grow native here. So all this proliferation of cuisine, this kind of global fusion, the greatest period of fusion cuisine in the history of the world came right in the wake of Columbus's discovery of the New World. Now, did bad things happen? But yeah, they did. But you know what? The natives were all killing each other too, and the Europeans were all killing each other. Hell, it was only 2 generations ago, white Christian Europeans were trying to bomb each other into oblivion. You know, it's not just race versus race. It's much more indicative of the human condition, no matter who you are. Yeah. But that period changed the way the world eats. Yeah. And I know this because there was a restaurant that opened in the Seaport District. I read a lot about it since, called MC Spido. It's this guy, Mark and Clark. They owned a famous
that
restaurant.
Courtyard or whatever right down there.
It was in the Renaissance Hotel.
Yeah.
So because it's in the Renaissance Hotel, they did Renaissance-inspired food. Mm-hmm. But they got me reading about this, but that was what changed the way the world eats. But so much of what we have never... Just things, there were certain things that only grew in the New World and certain things that only grew in the Old World. And you'd be amazed, one of the recipes in this book and one of the recipes my chef Avi Shemtov does is shakshuka, which is a Middle Eastern tomato stew. Mm-hmm. They didn't have that back in the days of the Bible. You know what I mean? It only came after the discovery of the New World. So nothing did more to integrate people long term than Columbus's discovery of the New World. It just drives me nuts that these people are so freaking stupid.
We're going to take down take down a statue or something.
Yeah, let's take down a statue. Well, you know what? All the good that came out of it too. Yeah. Like constitutions and democracy and multicultural societies that didn't exist back then. And
since we're on that subject, bad started in 1492. That's when the bad in the world started. Before that,
everyone would go to
So since you're on that subject, do you think we should change Yawkey Way to Jersey Street?
No, there's a great column in the Herald yesterday by Joe Fitzgerald about a black minister in Boston who totally defends Yawkey Way. Yeah. And he said, I forget the minister's name and I apologize, but he did a lot of good. Was he the perfect guy? No, but he also did a lot of good for the community. And it's not like, I look at it, was he lynching black people? No, he just was the last one to hire bring on a black baby, which sucks. And it sucks the world was like that. But was he a bad guy or a product of his times? I just think where does it stop? Where do you stop changing stuff?
Where does it stop? Exactly.
I mean, I think if you take a snapshot at anybody's life during Jim Crow, then it's not going to look symmetrically pleasant in this year if you look back at that. It's just how the world was.
What about Dana-Farber? Would Dana-Farber be the institution it was without the Yawkeys? I mean, how many... Did they just only let white people come in and get surgery or get cancer care? Right? Yeah. Was it only how many people of all different walks of life from all around the world did the Yawkees help? I mean,
and there are people from around the world that, if you look at Dana-Farber, and the Yawkees essentially took over the Jimmy Fund at some point from the Braves, right? I think there are people from around the world, from all different colors and all different religions, that would give their life for the work that the doctors have done at that hospital.
Yeah.
It's just So anyway, we'll get back on a tangent. I want to go back here for a second to talk about marketing and branding and around Guinness beer.
Yep.
And it's one of these beers, and I don't know if it was organically or if it was contrived or if it's just drunk people came up with it. But imagine that you go somewhere, a beer is put in such high esteem that you go somewhere where they have a good pour. And I used that all in 1995. We were like, they have a good pour. I don't know if I ever knew what that meant or if it exists.
Yep.
But how do you make that happen if you're a beer company? And I'll add one more thing. I'm going to make this question even longer.
Yep.
Guinness seems to have this swagger. If you look at all their posters and things, it's a
Good
smart ass.
Guinness is good for you.
Yeah.
It's good for you. It's English humor or something.
Yeah,
Or Irish humor, whatever it is.
Yeah, well, so a few things. Well, kind of, branding and consulting and PR is what I do now with all my restaurants, my municipalities, Quincy's municipality. I got a couple others we're hoping to sign on soon, and just help them shape their identity. And restaurants need to do that. Like, you need to know who you are, no matter what business you're in. But restaurants, if you walk in, I was in a place last night that's supposed to be a Mediterranean place, but they have bourbon all up and down on the shelves behind the bar. I'm like, wait a minute, that's where's the grappa, where's the limoncello? So anyway. You need to have consistency with your brand. Guinness had a couple things going for it. One, they had in the early days they had the approval of the English crown. Now they were in Dublin, but Arthur Guinness was a Protestant who worked for the. I forget the name of the castle in Dublin. I've been there a bunch. But the seat of the British Empire in Dublin, he worked for them, so he was very well connected politically. Which helped him get his business up and running. 2, he made a good product. I mean, it's really good beer. 3, as the product kind of took hold, they had the benefit of the Irish, I don't never pronounce it right, diaspora. Diaspora. All the Irish went all over the world, right? Something when you write it for 25 years, I can't pronounce the word. Anyway, Irish went all over the world, and they kind of took that with them. There is not I've been to Irish pubs in Bangkok, and there's an Irish pub right across from the Hofbrauhaus in Munich. Wherever you go, I've been to Irish pubs in Saigon. Wherever you go, there is an Irish pub, Go to some small little redneck town. There's an Irish pub. They're just the Irish are everywhere.
Sounds like a tough job you've had, Kerry. By the way,
how about this? There are 4.5 million people in Ireland, and there are 40 million Irish Americans. It's the greatest immigrant success story in the history of the world. But they went all over the world, so they brought with them their local, traditions and music, and of course what they like to drink. Finally, I think that's 4 things now, 4th or 5th. It's been a very innovative company. They've always been at the forefront of beer marketing and also beer production. For example, everyone thinks Guinness Draft is like traditional Guinness. That didn't exist before the 60s.
You're kidding.
It was always put in bottles. What they would do is ship it like Coca-Cola would do. They would take these barges and float it down the Liffey River, and they would drop off bulk beer to local bottlers. So people they had bottlers who would do it. They would just send you the liquid. And people always, Guinness for 200 years was drink out of a bottle. But they became very innovative and said, oh, well, we can do more volume, do whatever the reasons were. And they created this kind of unique nitro system to pour this like creamy head Guinness. And now everyone thinks that's Guinness, but that's not Guinness. That's Guinness of the last 50 years. And
I'll take it still, though.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great.
It's good.
But there's all different kinds of Guinness. In Nigeria, they have a big brewery, I think, in Lagos. And I think the biggest Guinness drinking countries in the world are England, Ireland. Of course, there's more penetration in Ireland, but there's, England's so much bigger, right? So many more people. So it's England, Nigeria, and Ireland, I believe, are the 3 biggest Guinness drinking countries in the world. But, they went... And they've also followed the British Empire early on when Ireland was still part of the British Empire. So when England ruled Nigeria, which is an English-speaking country, they built a big Guinness brewery there. So people grew up in Nigeria thinking Guinness is their beer. They're not, like their Budweiser. Like like Americans of our generation would think of Budweiser. And their the beer is different. It's called Foreign Extra Stout. It's made with sorghum, which is kind of an African grain. And so they've really been innovative and progressive at a lot of different levels. And of course, the marketing, like a perfect example, the Guinness Book of World Records.
Oh, yeah.
Guinness created that. That's the same Guinness. Yeah. That's the same Guinness. And they said, what, we'll just start putting records together. What a great brand extension. Yeah. It's been so successful. People don't even realize it's the same. But the Guinness Brewery, brilliant genius marketing. And now it's not even the Book of World Records. Now I think it's Guinness World Records because you probably don't get it in a book anymore, right?
Right.
Oh, yeah. So, I remember looking at that book as a kid, though.
Oh, yeah. It's great, And then people still vie to be, like we could be the 3 fattest assholes on a radio station at the same time. This could be a Guinness World Record right here. You know what I mean?
We certainly.
So you're not fat. I apologize. So.
I know.
Do I get an apology too, or no?
Well, I think me and you have talked about. Me and you have been on the same diet.
Well,
for a while.
Funny though. I don't know if I was talking to my wife or Jay about this today, but it's interesting because you're not afraid to throw a few pounds on, but you're also a jock. You got to pick one.
I used to be. Yeah.
And you've also got geek status too, because your shit about a lot of stuff. And then cold hard football facts. Do you like stats?
I'm a numbers nerd. Yeah, I do numbers tricks in my head all the time. Like I'll be calculating license plate numbers when I'm driving, stuff like that. I've always done that. I count in prime numbers, like weird stuff like that. Yeah. Well, so
have you tried counting cards?
No, but if I played cards, I don't gamble. I don't play cards. But if I did, why wouldn't you count cards?
I thought you said counting carbs.
No, I don't do that very well. Wow, this beer's 200 carbs. Oh, here's another one. By the way, do you know an apple has as many carbs as 3 Budweisers?
Jeez.
Oh, that's why we stay away from apples,
so
right?
three Budweisers instead of an apple, and you'll be fine. But it does. Beer doesn't have a lot of carbs. It's when you drink 12 of them. Like one beer doesn't have a lot. Anyway,
who has one beer?
So we talked about. I like to kind of be at the forefront of trends. I just see stuff coming, like the beer thing. So I was working in the corporate world, and I was freelancing for the Herald doing the beer column. In a staff food writing job opened up at the Herald. Mm-hmm. I had never written about food, but they liked my beer writing. My beer writing did really, really well. And I was the only one at the time doing it. Now every kid out there has a beer blog, So I had a chance to, it was a part-time job, but I was really interested in doing it. Yeah. And I also had this idea for this website. Like I was looking at football, and I realized that all these analysts, when I study the numbers, all these analysts have no idea what's going on in a football game. And the reason I knew is because when the Patriots won in 01, won the Super Bowl and won in 03, people said they're boring. How do they win? Oh, they're lucky. And I started looking at the numbers. I'm like, wait a minute. They're really good in all these indicators nobody talks about. That so weren't the Green Bay Packers in the 1960s, and so weren't the 49ers in the 80s. I'm like, wait a minute. People are looking at the wrong stuff. So I started just emailing my buddies. Hey, they say this about the Patriots, but these are the cold, hard football facts. Ooh. And I started sending out this email to my friends. Before long, I was hearing from people I didn't even know. Oh, my God, blah, blah, blah. So I said, screw it. I left the corporate world. I took the food job at the Herald, and I launched the Cold Hard Football Facts, this website, at the same time in 04. Within a week, I was on sports radio, like talking about my stuff, and it became kind of
incredible.
It's not really in existence. It's not really active anymore. It was a niche. We've evolved into these other apps, fan credit and stuff. I mean, we partner with a bunch of people, and we have a bunch of different, we have a whole bunch of different stuff. It was a niche thing.
No, but back then, were you able to sell ads on it, or
we did? But then the ad model kind of went away online. Right, it became capturing user data and stuff like that. So it just evolved, but it did wonders for me. Pretty soon I was writing for Sports Illustrated. I was on NFL Films all the time. Steve Sable was one of my biggest fans. Steve Sable, when I went to his office to do a thing for NFL Films, he had like 20 stories I wrote all over his wall at NFL Films in New Jersey. Wow. That to me was like my I made it moment, literally in as a writer. But what we realized is that throughout history, analysts, even coaches, teams today, they don't know what the hell they're doing. They look at the wrong stats. They look at the wrong numbers. So we identified the stats that win and lose football games. And I can tell you which teams know what stats win and lose football games and which teams don't. For example, the New York Jets have no idea what wins football games. I can tell by what they say in the press conferences. I can tell by who they draft. I can tell by the trades they make. I can tell by their game day strategy. They have no idea what they're doing. Which is why they suck. They're playing to the wrong stats, and there's this old school theory that you control the clock and run the ball, and that's all bullshit. None of that matters. None of that wins games. Yeah. And what we found are the stats that win games. It's all about passing efficiency and things like these little things to help make your team more efficient. Which is why Tom Brady was so good out of the gate. He was extraordinarily efficient, but he wasn't like this big arm downfield. Right. Everyone was looking for that big arm gunslinger, which is why early on there was a debate. Should they play Bledsoe or should they play Brady? If you know anything about football, it was clear Brady was a much better quarterback, but most of the football world was still saying, well, Brady's got the big arm. So who gives the big arm doesn't matter though.
So it's
sexy though.
But what you're saying, is counter to a lot of intuitive.
It was totally
belief,
counterintuitive.
Of course, that's why writers and talk radio people love it because you could be a contradictarian or what is it called?
Contrarian.
Contrarian. Yeah.
No, it was absolutely contrarian. Yeah. It flew in and we had battles with media people. There was one guy who wrote for CBS Sports, Pete Prisco, and who was a big Manning fan. And the story that put us on the map kind of nationally, we wrote a big story early on why Tom Brady is better than Peyton Manning. Like when Manning had 49 touchdown passes. Like, no, Brady's actually better, and here's why. People literally laughed at us, and these reporters all around the country, these guys are idiots. Well, what turned out to be true? Yeah, Tom Brady was better than Peyton Manning, and everyone agrees with it now. But if you look at the right numbers, it's like football is a kind of a chaotic sport. But if you look at the right numbers, it's easy to figure out. Not only that, it's almost predictable. Like my story for Fan Cred this year before the Super Bowl was like how Nick Foles is going to outgun the GOAT. How is he going to outgun Tom Brady? And it unfolded. If you look at the right numbers, it's pretty easy to kind of figure out.
How do you explain Eli Manning?
Eli Manning's a guy who just has played well in a couple big games, but he's
it does come down to that sometimes.
It does come down to that, but week in, year in and year out, he's not been a particular, like, I would put him in the Hall of Fame for those 2 games alone. Wow. If Joe Namath is in the Hall of Fame, who's a dreadful quarterback.
Really? You mean numbers wise?
Numbers wise.
Like, and he's one of us though, isn't he?
If he came back to the NFL, to match Tom Brady's career record, he would have to go 36, what is it? He would have to go 156-1 to match Tom Brady's career record.
Oh, wow.
He went 64-64 as an NFL quarterback, and Tom Brady's like 220-65 now, so.
He is first for the most compelling sideline interview in
history. But you know what? He could get away with it,
Oh, yeah.
Because he's Broadway Joe. You expect it,
Absolutely.
But once you look at those numbers, it's just kind of figure out. It's all about it. We have a stat we call the intelligence index, and it measures how efficiently you play in all phases of the game. And not only do these we always say smart teams win, dumb teams lose. Smart, efficient, well-coached teams win. Dumb, inefficient, poorly coached teams lose. Not only that, smart, efficient, well-coached teams win against the spread. And dumb, inefficient, poorly coached teams lose against the spread. It's remarkable. The top 5 teams year after year win almost 70% of their games against the spread, and the bottom 5 lose about 70% of the games against the spread. If you find a smart team and a dumb team, we call it a mental mismatch. You can print money all year long. I mean, we do like 70% a year on that number alone.
Have you done consulting for teams or for?
Yeah, you know what? I kind of got away. The way the business evolved, I kind of got away from that. But what they're looking for is. I should explore that a bit more. I've talked to a couple teams about it, but what they're looking for, like real data analytics. Like I don't do, like I'm not a trained statistician. And I don't build spreadsheets and all this and flowcharts.
Well, just like you didn't read the assigned books in the English class. Yeah. You're more of a kind of a elite hack. I mean that in the most positive way. And you seem to find your own way. It's not that you don't use 10 and 2 to drive forward, but you get there before the other guy.
Yeah, maybe. I think they're a little complimentary. I just, my brain just is all over the place. But I just get real curious about these things.
I have a couple questions. So, do you have the same insight with baseball and other sports?
One sport, one trick pony.
And then the last thing is, do you gamble with that?
Everyone tells me I should, and gambling doesn't interest me. And at some sort of intellectual level, I fear if I do, I'll become emotional and it'll impact.
Oh, I see.
Because gamblers are emotional. Like I get email, I get every Friday, Saturday, I get texts from friends. Hey, who's your top team? Who's your top team?
Oh, no kidding.
And all the time, and I try not to get into that because, I could probably sell them, but I don't want to be that 1-800 call now because I'm not going to be emotional. These guys, gamblers are emotional. They get a high off it. They do, and they're not. There are certain people, the sharps they call them or whatever, who maybe look at it really analytically. But for most people, my experience has been, I have no scientific data to back this up. Most people are gambling emotionally.
Yeah.
Right. And which is why the Patriots are amazing. They've won like 75% of the games against the spread over the last 2 years. They have some ridiculous number. In 2015 or 16, when they beat Atlanta in the Super Bowl, they were 16-3 against the spread that year, which is almost impossible in football. Why? Because people hate them and they bet against them, so they're undervalued in the betting marketplace. I don't have another reason to explain it. How can this team that wins all the time, week after week, year after year, they're always in the Super Bowl, they're always in the UFC title game, how are they undervalued in the marketplace? There's got to be a reason. My belief is that because people hate them. They bet against them because they don't want them to win. But the reality is, which drives down the point spread, which makes it easier for them to cover. And that's my theory on it. But they should not be winning 70-something percent of their games against the spread over 2 years. That's insane.
Are you the best Kerry Byrne that you can be?
No.
What percentage are you at, would you say?
Well, I have nice hair. I think my best quote is I have nice hair.
You do?
So, I don't know, man. I don't know. I feel like I'm like talking too much about myself.
It's all about you. No, I mean, we talk about this, the whole team of the show is like we talk about it all the time and say, man, if I was the best I could be at, doing my radio thing and columns and other things, and then going and pitching myself at TV and whatever, and never effed around it could probably be making more money, be much bigger.
You know what? I agree with. Listen, I've been able to do mostly. I've just been able to do cool stuff. Like I talked earlier, when I could have gone to law school, but I just want to go out and I started traveling. I go and see stuff, and you learn stuff. And I love when a friend calls me, "Hey, I'm in Antwerp. Where should I go?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, go to this place, go to that place." And like those experiences help me. And then honestly, working at the Herald, my business now in consulting is being at the Herald all these years. You want to reach somebody? I have their phone number.
Yeah.
You probably do too, right? You need to get in touch with someone. Oh, I know them.
Yeah.
Not because I'm anybody, because the Herald in its day, and obviously it's gone through some trouble. It carried some weight, and people would snap shit when you called, and so you can reach a lot of people,
So of all these things that you do, what you tell a story of being on, I guess it was Omaha Beach or in Normandy anyway, and drinking some cider or something.
Yep.
I thought, man, there's a confluence of not only the heritage of the place, but the incredible world history. Of an area. I mean, it seems to me that for you, a guy who's an enthusiast, a World War II enthusiast, and a history enthusiast, and somebody who appreciates traveling and beer, et cetera, is something like that just a dream come true?
I would like at some point to move to Normandy and write books about it. I'm just fascinated by all the history, the food, the culture, D-Day, of course. By the way, did you hear, Quincy's one of my clients, but I grew up in Quincy. It's an amazing historic community that still kind of under the radar. I'm trying to help elevate them.
Yeah.
They just found the USS Lexington. It's one of America's first aircraft carriers, built in Quincy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was built at the Fort River Shipyard. It was the second American aircraft carrier, CV-2, and it was like state of the art at its time. And when it was sunk at the Battle of the Coral Sea, they were building another aircraft carrier in Quincy, and it was going to be named something else, but they renamed it the USS Lexington. CV-16, that went on to have a very distinguished career of service. It was like the first aircraft carrier into Tokyo Bay. They called it the Blue Ghost because the Japanese reported it sunk 4 times and it never sank. It came back to fight. And it's now still afloat today, a National Historic Landmark in Corpus Christi, Texas, the oldest aircraft carrier in the world. And they were both built in Quincy. And when I saw that story about finding the Lexington, I almost cried because all these ships I remember the shipyard, they were all built right in my backyard.
That's unbelievable.
The USS Massachusetts, the USS Quincy, which served in D-Day and in Tokyo Bay, and in the USS Massachusetts, were just still afloat, still a national historic landmark.
Iowa class gunships.
And the people in my town built those friggin' ships.
Yeah, that's great.
It's awesome, So I'm fascinated by all the history around me. Like the guy who won World War II was from Quincy. The guy who dropped the atomic bomb on Nagasaki, Major General Charles Sweeney, went to North Quincy High School. As we joke, two kids from Quincy started the revolution, John Hancock and John Adams, and a kid from Quincy ended World War II. So I just find all that history fascinating. So Normandy, there's actually a monument to the USS Quincy, the heavy cruiser Quincy, built in Quincy, of course, at Utah Beach.
So you've become this ambassador to Quincy. Is this?
Hold on, can I try just real quick? The amazing thing is, you ever see those bottles of there's pictures on D-Day, the soldiers drinking bottles in some barn. They find this stash of booze. It's actually cider because Normandy is too cold to grow grapes, so they grow apples. So so they make cider there, and it's brilliant. And you're right along the invasion beaches are all these little family cider makers. And they make cider, and they make Calvados, which is like apple brandy. And you just pop in, you go to the cemetery, then you go to a distillery.
Oh, wow.
And they sell like it's just all cool little local stuff, local cheeses, local cider. It's like an unbelievable. If you're into that stuff, it's really cool.
God, I would love to have seen. It's a shame that there's no footage of at least the Omaha Beach landing. I mean, I can't get my mind around how big that looked with all those ships. All the landing craft and all those inflatable things. They were out. I don't even know what to call them. They're like blimps, right? They're used to.
I just watched the beginning of Saving Private Ryan. Obviously, one of the greatest few minutes of any movie. Oh my God!
Yeah,
just leading up to that beach, and Dana was saying that you have to be young, 17, 18, 19 years old to go. You're just dumb enough to be able to, I mean, obviously they're heroes and things like that, but you can't be older to do stuff like that.
That generation understood that I think this generation hasn't, that there was one way or the other. It was either we were going to win or we were going to lose, and they realized that the fate of the world was in their hands, and they realized it right away. And they and if you read, and I've read like every D-Day book there is, but they knew they had to do it. Not only that, they wanted to do it, which baffles me because you saw this report yesterday that 70% of American kids now are unfit to join the military for a variety of reasons. And a different time, but they wanted to do it. And maybe part of it was ignorance, but I think also part of it was they knew it needed to be done. Who are they going to leave it to? You know.
Yeah.
And one of the books I've wanted to work on. People talk about the industrial mobilization of the United States and obviously the military mobilization of the United States. And I wrote a column for the Herald about this years ago. There was also a spiritual mobilization of the United States. It was very much seen as a Christian struggle for society. And it was in the writings. It was in political speeches. It was in, where the country was just in, culturally. On G-Day, FDR read a national prayer. If you read it, it's really powerful about how Almighty God is, called upon us to, for this great crusade, and it was on the front page of every newspaper in America. It was read on every radio station in America. There were ads I dug up in old Boston newspapers of that came out on like Macy's and Filene's, and everyone ran these full page ads on all the newspapers when the news of G-Day broke. One of them was like by Filene's. There was a picture of George Washington on his knees in prayer with all these guns there, and it says, I wish I could remember the exact words. Then conquer we must when our cause is just, and this be our motto, and God is our trust. Wow. It's actually the very last stanza of the Star-Spangled Banner, if you go all the way through the whole thing.
Another racist song, by the way.
But it was very much seen as a spiritual struggle for the survival of our religion and our people. And FDR said it outright. Mayor LaGuardia in New York City had a mass in front of 50,000 people that day. I mean, there's pictures of everyone went to church. It was a Tuesday. G-Day was a Tuesday, and it was just a different time. And,
we went through the archives down the hall here at the Herald and read a bunch of things, and church bells were ringing, and they had all sorts of gatherings, and I mean, it was really it hasn't happened since. Probably collectively, not everybody has been in the same mindset. Maybe on 9/11, everybody was suddenly on the same wavelength.
That's the last
time. And it didn't take long for that to spin off the
hell,
of
course, because we suck. But anyway, hey, so how during all this stuff, because I get to meet your mom, Fancy Nancy. How, first of all, what was her influence on you? Were you like her? Yeah,
me and my mom were the same exact people. She wasn't, she had a family to raise and this and that, but she was someone who could fearlessly meet new people. And I think that's the best way to put it. She would walk in, she would say totally inappropriate things to people. She would walk into a bar, and within a half an hour would know everybody in the place, and they'd all love her, and she'd be friends with them. And me and her would go travel, and we would just pop in. We'd just go around drinking. We would and get to meet everyone. So she had this real dynamic personality. She passed away last year after battling cancer and stuff. But she was just really kind of a unique, kind of one-off person. But she just had this fearlessness about her, you know what I mean? And so many people are shy when they meet people, You
think that's a New England trait?
Being shy or being fearless?
Being fearless, not fearless, but I know your mom was a special. I mean, I'm sure your mom was a special person and all that. But I feel like New Englanders sort of always just go into bars and very talk about anything and everything about themselves. They give up too much information immediately. They approach everybody. They approach everybody immediately.
But they're not known as being friendly, though. Too. Can you be outgoing and not friendly? I don't know. I don't know. It's funny, like when you go down south, everyone calls you honey, right? Every store, the women always call. It seems women do it, but honey, oh dear, and I don't know, but I don't know. Those cultural people wondered. Are those cultural traits? Do they still exist? These regional traits, because the country's so homogenized now.
So getting back to your mother for a second, all of these things that you've ticked off, all of these accomplishments and different things you've done. I mean, you've gone on to all sorts of TV and things like that, and I mean, in a sense, there's one part that says like, "What the hell business do I have being there?" And the other side, the people in these TV stations are thrilled to have you. I mean, what I'm saying badly is that how much were you driven, motivated by the fact that you got to tell your mom these things?
Yeah, I think we grew up in a very blue collar house. Mm-hmm. My grandfather was a plumber, my dad's a plumber, my two little brothers are still plumbers, and we had a blue collar existence, and we never ate out. I don't know what my family's finances were, but we never ate out. But we never thought of it. We ate at home. We weren't really exposed. We had typical. Like I didn't know steak had juice in it until I was 19 years old. My mom would broil the shit out of it. Not that she didn't cook great food for us, but just that was what we ate, right? And so there's a certain irony that we never went anywhere. Mm-hmm. We couldn't. I assume we just couldn't afford to, and we just had a very blue collar local existence, like a lot of people still do, in fact. So there's a certain irony that I went out and was able to travel the world and then eat out all the time, then become this totally obnoxious food snob where I go somewhere and, oh my God, you're full manure. It's not the way Julia Child did it, and that's actually, I feel guilty about that. It's like such an arrogant, douchey thing because it's not who I was. It's not how I grew up. I grew up a very blue collar kid, and I like to think I'm still a blue collar guy. I think in certain ethics I am, but I think my mom took pride in the fact that she didn't have those opportunities. She had me when she was 19. She had to raise a family. She was fairly young when she died. She didn't have those opportunities, so I think she took great pride in the fact that I was able to go out and spread my wings and live kind of a unique life, and still maintain a very grounded relationship with with my mom, So I think that I think she took pride in that.
Well, I met her for 38 minutes. Remember when Supergirl, who did we have? We had some
that's
cosplay
right.
girl who was basically naked anyway.
Yeah.
And
the Ice Bucket Challenge.
Yes, that's right. And your mom made an impression right then. So
I've heard that from so many people. I appreciate that, man. I really do.
So let's get to the stuff you're doing now. And
hey, real quick, you mentioned Steve Sweeney, who's a friend of yours.
Yeah.
The house I grew up in is right over the other side of the marsh from where he lives, where my mom lived. Yeah. My street had 4 feet of water on it. We're about 250 yards inland from the ocean.
Oh man,
he's right on the water. His whole street got destroyed. I don't know how his house would survive based on what I saw, but he lives in the same. I could basically see his house from my parents' house, and it's just the other side of the marsh. And my street, again, 200. We never had water that high, not even close. His whole street was like ground zero. All those national news reports.
Yeah.
Of all the people in front end loaders being saved in Quincy. That's right. That was right at his house.
That is scary.
Yeah. And I don't know. I've met Steve. We're not friends, but everyone kind of knows. Oh, that's Steve Sweeney's house. But it's an area called Post Island, and I don't know how they'll be able to rebuild there. It's pretty scary.
That's terrible. That's tough.
Yeah. Anyway, good luck to Steve. If I know he's a friend of yours.
He's a great guy. You love him.
Yeah, no, I've met him and we've got along fine. But I just I feel bad for all those guys. Yeah, so if you see him, tell him
I will absolutely. All right, let's go over some of the stuff you're doing. You're with first of all fancredsports.com.
Yeah, Fancred. It's mostly a mobile app. Fancred you can download on your mobile device, and but we have a kind of a web version, Fancred Sports, and that's all different sports, and we got a lot of cool stuff. So when I write football now, during the mostly just during the season, that's where you find my stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. And now for the town of Quincy.
Yep.
And you actually, it was one of the greatest times ever. You brought us over to the John Adams.
That's
tomb,
right. Yeah.
Which was just unbelievable to think that the John Adams.
Yeah. The guy who created constitutional government.
Right.
The guy who took
who
on the
wrote
British.
nasty letters with Jefferson back and forth, and then they liked each other at one point, and holy God, it's incredible. Yeah,
it's a crypt if you've never been there. It's a crypt inside what we call the Church of the Presidents, and it's John Adams, Abigail Adams, who were probably in fact, Boston Magazine did a thing, the top Boston power couple of all time, and John and Abigail were number one. I mean, they created this country, so that's kind of a big deal. And then also John Quincy Adams, his son, and his wife, Louisa Catherine Adams, they're all in these granite tombs in the cemetery right across from Quincy Center Red Line. One of the big projects going on in Quincy right now is to build what they call the Adams Hancock Green. When you step off the Red Line, right in between City Hall, which part of it is like this Greek Revival Town Hall, and then there's also this Greek Revival masterpiece Church of the Presidents. It's going to be this big park in between.
Yep.
So this city of 100,000 people will now have like a little New England town square with statues of John Adams, John Hancock, and it really create kind of a cool town centerpiece. But we're working a number of levels just to increase the city's visibility, increase its visitation and things like that. So we're working on a lot of different things, and my main focus is on the hospitality. There's a whole big restaurant scene pop in, but it's all right off the Red Line. It's not out in the suburb. It's 15 minutes from South Station.
Totally self-contained too. You can find everything in Quincy. The bars are fantastic. The restaurants are great.
Big national news this week. Quincy's going to be home to the first vegan beer hall in America.
Oh, really?
Opening this spring. Yeah, it's going to be all what they call plant-based now, all plant-based food and all the great local craft beers and a cafe, and it's getting national press because it's the first of its kind. Yeah.
I love that the way restaurants now find a way to say, "Oh no, we're not just drinking. No, this is a vegan thing."
Yeah.
It's not about drinking 15.
Well, so I said to the owner, because now I do marketing. He said, "You call it a socialist first, plant-based. They don't like the word vegan anymore. Plant-based.
Right.
First plant-based beer." I said, "You're the first in America." I said, "Go change your website." So we changed his website, and then we sent it out. And within a day, we had that, and kind of blowing up all over the place because anything first.
Anything
superlative. You know,
Great.
biggest, tallest, first,
Yeah.
handsomest in your case,
Thank
Tom.
Thank
know,
you.
that's
Sure about
national
that.
news.
Thank you.
So-
Favorite to Boston, the cookbook you've got?
Yeah, we wrote this. I wrote this last year with Jay Hodge, chef owner of Mike City Diner in the South End. You see him on the Food Network all the time, and really cool. Just his culinary journey from war-torn Beirut to American success.
And is the best place to still find you at Football Facts on Twitter?
On Twitter at Football Facts.
Is that just Football Facts stuff? Or
No, you know what? It is most. I kind of reserve Twitter for my football stuff because Twitter
Okay.
is such a human cesspool.
Yeah.
That
Sure
I
it
just
is.
like if I can just stick to the stats here, and we have, if you want really cool football data,
Yeah.
like why Philadelphia was going to cover against the Patriots in the Super Bowl,
Right.
that's where you'd find that stuff.
Awesome. And anything else we need to know about Quincy or places? Please. This is the shill 30 seconds here, Kerry.
Well, I'm working right now. One of the great clients I'm working with is British Beer Company. Do you know
God
these
bless
guys?
them. I love them. You
Yeah,
kidding me?
yeah. So they got 13 pubs all over Massachusetts, a couple in New Hampshire. But their chef used to cook for at Windsor Castle. For the royal family. So we get a lot of press right now for him because the royal wedding's coming up in May.
Oh, my
so,
God.
So I said, you cooked for at Windsor Castle? He says, yeah. I said, dude, this is a big deal. So we've been in all kinds of newspapers, all kinds of TV shows, and we're working on a dinner right now at the James Beard House in Manhattan to coincide with the royal. We're working right now. It's still in the discussion stage, but to do a royal wedding dinner at the prestigious James Beard House in Manhattan on the day of the royal wedding. Yeah. So they got a lot of cool. British beer companies got a lot of cool stuff going on.
That is fantastic. Kerry, we certainly appreciate it. This has been awesome talking to you.
thank you.
Yeah,
We gotta do this.
nice to meet you too as well.
Thank you.
We'll have to talk about dive bars next time. We didn't.
Oh,
get,
yeah,
we
we
didn't
can
get to that.
skip over
But,
that's-
but I can contribute to that.
Yeah.
To say the least.
You know what? We should do a whole dive bar episode. You know when when the first two guys you want to talk to dive bars about can't make it, you can call me and I'll fill in.
His name is Kerry Byrne, and just look him up. You'll find all the stuff he's doing. Appreciate it, man.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
This is the I Shoulda Did More Reading podcast. I shoulda did more reading.com. See you later.